I'm actually having a good time with this Lumix S9 and the 26mm kit lens. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto. I'm a photographer, and today I have with me the Lumix S9 and the 26mm f8 kit lens. And this has to be one of the most hated camera lens combos right now, at least here on YouTube, at least based on what I see on my YouTube stream. And in this video, I'm gonna share my opinion on this. But first, a disclaimer, this camera is not mine. This is only on loan from Focus Nordic Finland, and after I'm done with my experimenting with this camera, I will return this camera, so it's not mine to keep, only on loan. Now let's talk about this lens. This is one of the two kit lens options for this camera. The other one is a 20-60mm zoom lens, and this is the prime lens option, 26mm focal length, fixed f8 aperture and manual focus. And I think this is pretty interesting choice as a kit lens for a camera like this, because I think 99.99% of regular recreational photographers would prefer autofocus rather than manual focus. And also the fixed 8 aperture is a bit of an interesting solution because in low light you'll inevitably end up with quite high ISO values. However, it's not all bad. I actually have enjoyed using this lens for street photography for quite a bit. f8 is pretty much the sweet spot of a full frame lens for street photography, and the manual focus is no like a hindrance at all. I set the focus just before infinity, like so, and the depth of field seems to go from about 3 meters to almost infinity, and that is just about perfect for pretty much every normal street photography situation. I wish they made the focus scale a bit more detailed. Now there's only the infinity and the minimum focus distance marked on the scale, and if I'd like to set the distance to maybe 2 meters, it's a little bit ambiguous and I have to check it on the screen to verify it on the screen every time. Would be so much easier with a couple of more markings on the focus scale. I also saw an interesting hack on L-Rumors on how to make this to an f4 lens. The hack involves removing the aperture ring or whatever it is that you can see right there inside the lens. And apparently under that there's another ring or some similar circle, and that makes this to an f4 lens without, according to the hack, without any image quality penalty. However, I'm not sure if I'd want this to be an f4 lens, because it would still be a fixed maximum aperture, and I happen to love this huge depth of field that I get with f8 for street photography. I just said how I enjoyed this lens for street photography, and that is true, but I still have to wonder why manual focus and why fixed f8 aperture. I mean, this lens is quite tiny, but it would be possible to make a similar lens about the same size with a proper variable aperture, maybe a little bit faster maximum aperture and autofocus. And that would make this lens so much more desirable for most of the target audience and to everyone. I'd much rather take an autofocus lens than this, even though I have enjoyed this. Most of the time when I was out there using this camera, I used it like this, with one hand, and it was such a nice experience, and I think this camera works really well for something like that, especially with this fixed aperture prime lens. I set the distance to the lens's hyperfocal distance, so everything from about 2-3 meters to almost infinity would be in focus, so I would only compose, hit the shutter. Really good fun, especially for street photography. The guys at PGY Tech sent a couple of these camera straps to me, and I promised them that I'll give them a shout out if I like the straps, and I really like these straps. I have 2 of them. Another one is here attached on this Fuji XT50, and another one is on the Lumix S9. Please check them out. I'll put a link down below. It's not an affiliate link. I get nothing from it. But just in case you're looking for a new strap for your camera, I like these. Check it out. I also used another fixed aperture lens with this S9. This is the 7 Artisan 35mm f5.6. I had almost forgotten I even have this lens, but someone left a comment for my old review video. I'll put the link up here just in case you haven't seen it. Please check it out. And after the comment, I decided to try this on the S9. However, I find the 26mm is so much nicer to use because this is at 35 and the aperture is f5.6. There's not that much of depth of field and you pretty much have to focus this to get consistent results. So it's not nearly as relaxed to use as this one, at least for fast-paced street photography full of sudden surprises. At the time of the launch of this camera, Panasonic made such a big deal out of the Lumix app and the LUTs that you can create in the app and then transfer them into the camera and then shoot those fancy looking JPEGs. And I totally understand it. I think many of the younger users of this camera, and I think those are also the main target group for this camera, they probably enjoy playing around with the app and playing around with the LUTs and the different looks that they can get. However, for me, for my photography, it doesn't really matter, or it's not a big deal, because I like to do my playing afterwards in post. I like to shoot raw and then process my images in Lightroom or Photolab and DxO Photolab, and that's my way of doing it. I'd rather play or fine-tune my pictures after I shot them rather than before. The app itself is easy to use and it's super easy to configure your LUTs and then transfer them into your camera and also transfer your pictures from your camera to the app. So in that regard, Panasonic did a really good job. There are so many camera apps that work fine when you make the initial setup. But when you really need them, all of a sudden there's something wrong. They don't work at all and it is just frustrating. But this Lumix app seems to work really, really well and it's reliable. There has been so much whining about the lack of viewfinder. And I don't think it's such a big deal after all. We have, after all, so many cameras with a viewfinder already, like this Fuji X-T50 and so many more. And almost every time I see someone out there using a system camera, they shoot like this. They use the rear screen and not the viewfinder. And I don't think it's such a big deal, especially for the target audience, which I think is younger people who first started out their photography with a smartphone, and as we all know, smartphones don't have a viewfinder, they only have the screen. And also the lack of mechanical shutter, that was another huge downside for many. And I agree that it is a downside, but I don't think for most, or not most, but for many normal shooting situations, it's not such a big deal. I had a good fun shooting street on this camera. I never had any issues, rolling shutter issues or anything like that. But I have to admit I shot almost all my pictures in bright sunshine. I did not shoot any nighttime cityscapes, street scenes or other scenes where artificial light would be dominating the scene or would be the only light source. In those situations you can get some banding, horizontal stripes in your pictures with an electronic shutter like this. But I still think the lack of mechanical shutter, it's not such a big, huge deal. I did not try any of the video features. I only concentrated on photography with this camera. However, I can say that the recording time limits on this camera would be no issue for me. And I don't think there would be any kind of an issue for most of the prospective buyers either. If you are creating YouTube videos like this, or some other social media video content, you are probably only filming a couple of minutes, 5 minutes at a time. So for example, a 10-minute recording limit is not a big issue at all. This camera is not particularly cheap or very affordable. It's a full-frame camera, so it's understandable that it's not a $1,000 camera. However, for almost the same money you can buy the Sony a7C Mark II. This is the a6700, but the size is the same as the a7C Mark II. So when we put them side by side, we can see that the a7C Mark II is not any bigger than the S9, except for the grip, but the S9 is not very comfortable to hold if you have a bigger lens mounted on it than the 26mm kit lens. I tried the Sigma 35mm f2 lens. It's not a big lens at all, but even that lens felt uncomfortable because this camera doesn't have any kind of an accessory grip on it. So this camera definitely needs an accessory grip if you intend to mount anything bigger on it, any bigger lens. So the a7C Mark II is not a bad option. It has a mechanical shutter and very good video features too. I think the main features that make the S9 more attractive than some other cameras, like the Sony a7C Mark II for example, are the Lumix app and the possibility to play with the LUTs. And it's also super easy to share your photos and videos right away from the Lumix S9. But if you are a more traditional photographer, I think the Sony a7C Mark II can offer you a little bit more solid camera for photography, and it has some more important photocentric features. I had a really good fun with this camera and I really enjoyed using this for street photography. But would I buy this camera? Well, that's a good question. In my region here in Finland, I can get the Lumix S5 Mark II for almost the same price. And that camera has some features that are more for me. But I fully understand that for some people this camera offers some features that are not available on any other camera at the moment. So this can be really attractive for some buyers, but probably not for me, at least not now. So there you have it, my take on the Lumix S9 camera. I hope you enjoyed this little coverage, and if you enjoyed it a lot and if you'd like to support my channel, please do check out my e-zines, link down below. And those are the best way to support my work here on YouTube, and that helps me to make more videos for you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon in the next video.